Hello. Look at what's happening around you. No, really, look. Look at the way they're suddenly acting like they've been on your side the whole time. Look at how their voices soften when they talk to you now. Look at how they keep glancing your way, like they're trying to read the weather in your expression, like they're terrified of misjudging even one detail. This isn't respect. This is fear wrapped in politeness. This is panic disguised as admiration. This is the aftermath of a realization so powerful it cracked their confidence open, like a cheap glass dropped on concrete. They didn't switch sides because they finally understood you. They switched sides because, for the first time, they understood themselves in your presence, and what they saw scared them. Because something happened recently, didn't it? Something shifted, something in your tone, your energy, your posture, your presence. It wasn't loud, it wasn't aggressive, it wasn't theatrical, but it was undeniable. There was a weight in your words, a gravity in your gaze, a magnetic pressure in the air that made everyone around you sit up a little straighter, without even realizing why. You didn't try to dominate the room, you just existed differently, and that was enough. And the people who once doubted you, dismissed you, underestimated you, they felt that shift hit them so hard, it rattled their certainty. This wasn't confidence. They've seen confidence before. This was something far deeper, far sharper, far more unsettling. This was self-possession. This was inner power that doesn't need audience approval to validate itself. This was presence that doesn't ask permission to take up space. This was the kind of energy that people don't just notice, they react to, instinctively, automatically, without control. This was the kind of energy that rewrites social hierarchy without a single word spoken. And they felt it, every single one of them. Remember how they used to talk over you? How they used to ignore your warnings, brush off your instincts, laugh at your ideas? That was back when they thought they understood you, when they believed they had you properly categorized. Back then, they thought you were predictable, manageable, harmless. But then came that moment, the moment where you didn't argue, didn't defend, didn't resist. You just responded in a way that exposed everything. Not with rage, not with volume, but with clarity. A clarity they weren't prepared for. Maybe it was the way you looked at someone and they felt their excuses crumble in their throat. Maybe it was the way you told the truth without flinching, and it broke through the illusions they were clinging to. Maybe it was the way you didn't bend, didn't fold, didn't shrink even an inch when they tried to push you. But whatever it was, it demolished every false narrative they had created about you. They saw something in you that they weren't supposed to see, because even you weren't fully aware of how intense it was. A level of inner strength you've built quietly, slowly, painfully. The strength they took for granted. The strength they thought was passivity, when in reality it was restraint. You weren't being submissive, you were being selective. You weren't withdrawing, you were observing. You weren't quiet, you were studying every move, every angle, every intention. And now that they've connected the dots, now that they can't deny what's right in front of them, they're scrambling. Those same people who used to treat you like a background character are now fighting among themselves over who gets to apologize first, who gets to clear the air, who gets to rewrite history by suddenly acting like they were always supportive. Pay attention to their behavior. Notice how quickly they switch tones. Notice the sudden sweetness in their voice. Notice how they're offering explanations no one asked for. Notice how they're checking your reactions like they're waiting for a verdict. That's not kindness. That's not growth. That's fear disguised as humility. They don't want to be on your bad side because they finally realized that being on your bad side doesn't come with explosions or revenge. It comes with something far worse: your absence, your detachment, your disinterest. They realized that the most dangerous thing you can do to someone isn't attack them, it's stop caring about them. And you did. You walked away emotionally long before you walked away physically, and now they're left with the void your energy used to fill. Do you know why that terrifies them? Because they finally understand something. Your presence had been supporting them in ways they didn't appreciate. You stabilized the room. You absorbed tension. You prevented conflict. You guided conversations. You brought emotional intelligence they leaned on without even noticing. They assumed it was effortless for you, but it never was. And when you stopped doing it, everything around them started falling apart. Conversations became chaotic. Social dynamics became awkward. People started clashing. The environment became heavy. And that's when they realized something they never admitted before. You weren't just there. You were holding everything together. That's why they're switching sides. That's why they're suddenly treating you like some rare artifact. That's why they're whispering, watching, calculating. Because now they see what you are capable of when you're not dimming yourself for other people's comfort. They see the strength that was hiding behind your patience. They see the intelligence behind your quiet. They see the awareness behind your restraint. And it's hitting them in waves, each realization heavier than the last. No one likes to confront how wrong they were about someone, but watching you shift into this version of yourself forced them to confront it. They feel guilty, they feel embarrassed, they feel exposed, because every time they look at you now, they're reminded of how deeply they misread you. They're reminded of how foolishly they believed in their own assumptions. They're reminded that the safe version of you was never real. It was just the version you allowed them to see. And now you're not allowing anything. You're simply existing. And your existence alone is enough to reorder the entire social landscape around you. Some of them are tiptoeing. Some of them are overcompensating. Some of them are suddenly acting like your biggest fans. Some of them are rehearsing their apologies in their head before they get the courage to say them out loud. But all of them are aware, painfully aware, that they can no longer treat you the way they did in the past. They're nervous because you changed. They're terrified because you didn't change. You just stopped pretending. They're switching sides because they see where the real strength is now. They see which direction the energy is moving. They see who's rising and who's falling. And no one wants to be on the wrong side of that. But there's something deeper underneath their panic, something they won't admit even to themselves. They're afraid that you've seen through them. They're afraid you know exactly who supported you and who sabotaged you. They're afraid you noticed the moments they doubted you, belittled you, overlooked you. And you did. You noticed everything. You just waited. You let time reveal what words could never express. And now they're wondering how you see them, what category you've placed them in, whether you trust them or not, whether you've already removed them from your inner world. And that fear is eating them alive, because you're not predictable anymore. You're not holding back anymore. You're not packaging yourself to fit their comfort anymore. They don't know what you'll say, what you'll do, how you'll respond, or whether you'll even bother responding at all. They don't know where you stand, and that's exactly what terrifies them. The truth is, you've stepped into a level of personal power where people don't just react to what you say. They react to what you might say. They react to what you might do. They react to what they think you're thinking. Your energy has become a psychological mirror, showing them their own insecurities, their own mistakes, their own misjudgments, and they hate it. But they can't escape it, because they can't escape you. Not the new you, the real you. And here's the part that's driving them insane. They know you're not angry. You're not seeking revenge. You're not trying to teach them a lesson. You don't need to. Your growth already did. And now they're scrambling, switching sides, battling guilt, fighting for a chance to redeem themselves. Not because you demanded it, but because their conscience won't let them stay on the other side anymore. And this is where the shift becomes almost uncomfortable for them, because the more they watch you operate with this calm, centered, self-assured presence, the stronger the pressure inside them becomes. It's like every step you take forward tightens the grip around their pride, squeezing them until the apology they've been avoiding becomes the apology they're desperate to deliver. They can't stand the thought of being remembered as the ones who doubted you. They can't stand being the characters who misread you so deeply. They can't stand the idea that they chose the wrong side at the wrong time, only to witness you rising in real time. And now, instead of defending their choices, instead of pretending they were justified, they're slowly breaking down under the weight of their own embarrassment. Because the truth is simple. They didn't just misjudge you. They misjudged themselves. They thought you were easy to replace. They thought you were predictable. They thought you were someone whose value could be measured by their limited perception. They had no idea who they were dealing with. They had no idea how quickly the energy around you could shift when you detached emotionally and stepped fully into your own power. They had no idea how much of their stability depended on your presence, and now they're experiencing a strange mixture of regret and admiration. Regret because they mishandled you. Admiration because your evolution is impossible to deny. And that combination is eating them alive. They're wrestling with questions they never expected to ask themselves. Why did I distance myself from the one person who carried that kind of aura? How did I not see the potential when it was right in front of me? How did I let my insecurity push away someone who was clearly meant for more? These questions echo in their mind every time they see you making progress, every time they hear your name in a positive conversation, every time they watch you walk into a room with that unshakable confidence, every time someone praises you, every time your presence shifts the atmosphere. They feel a sting in their chest because they know, on some level, they contributed to the very transformation that now intimidates them. They fueled your growth without realizing it, and they can't handle that reality. So now they're switching sides, not in a calculated strategic move, but in a panicked, subconscious retreat from their own guilt. They're trying to rewrite their role in your story. They're attempting to reposition themselves as supporters, as allies, as people who always believed in you, even though you remember exactly how they reacted when you were at your lowest. They didn't just doubt you, they dismissed you. They didn't just underestimate you, they quietly rooted against you. They didn't just distance themselves, they distanced themselves right when you needed clarity, support, and consistency. And yet here they are, coming back with shaky smiles, softened tones, overly polite messages, cautious energy. Not because you demanded it, not because you confronted them, but because they no longer feel safe standing where they stood before. Your evolution changed the power dynamic completely. Now they're dealing with a version of you they're not equipped for. A version of you who doesn't chase, doesn't cling, doesn't repeat yourself, doesn't seek validation, doesn't need approval, doesn't fear distance. A version of you who learned how to breathe without them. And that scares them more than anything. Because deep down, they always assumed you needed them more than they needed you. Now they're realizing how backwards that belief actually was. You were the anchor. You were the grounding force. You were the stable presence. You were the one who brought sincerity, depth, and emotional intelligence into the connection. And without you, they feel the instability they once projected onto you. They feel the emptiness they once accused you of having. They feel the confusion they once believed you created. They're waking up to the reality that it wasn't you, it was them. And that realization is brutal. Their ego wasn't ready to face someone who could evolve this fast. Their pride wasn't prepared to watch you glow in ways they never imagined. Their insecurity wasn't designed to handle your transformation. And now they're scrambling, trying to figure out how to re-enter your life without looking desperate, without sounding insincere, without admitting how deeply they regret underestimating you. But no matter how they rehearse the apology, no matter how they plan the conversation, no matter how they try to present themselves as self-reflective and mature, their energy exposes them. You can feel the guilt radiating off them. You can sense the shift in their behavior. You can tell they're trying to get close again. It's written in their body language. It's hidden in the pauses between their words. It's embedded in the hesitations before they speak. It's evident in the way they watch you now, carefully, respectfully, almost nervously. They're afraid of two things: losing access to you forever, and facing the truth of why they mistreated you in the first place. They thought you'd come crawling back. You didn't. They thought you'd shrink after they left. You expanded. They thought they held the upper hand. They never did. And now they're living through the consequences of their assumptions. They're witnessing the shift they never expected. People around them are questioning their previous behavior. People around them are noticing how your energy has strengthened while theirs has weakened. People are asking them, what happened between you two? And they have no respectable answer. Because they know if they tell the truth, they'll expose their insecurity, their immaturity, their lack of emotional depth. So instead they sit quietly with their guilt while pretending to be indifferent. But their energy betrays them every time they see you. That tension in their shoulders, that stiffness in their expression, that awkwardness in their presence. They're terrified you can see through them. And the truth is, you can. You see everything more clearly now. You see the way they shift their weight when they're near you. You see the way their eyes soften, the way their voice changes, the way their energy becomes calmer, almost apologetic. You see their hesitation when they try to speak. You see the microseconds of contemplation before they say your name. You see the emotional conflict happening internally. They want to apologize, but they're struggling with the order of operations. Should they explain first, or admit first, or soften the blow first, or test your openness first? They're running a mental simulation every time they plan to approach you. And that simulation always ends with the same conclusion: I can't avoid this forever. I have to face them. But they don't know how to face someone who has grown this much. They don't know how to approach someone who no longer lives in the emotional space they once created. They don't know how to speak to someone who has stepped into their power, their identity, their worth, and their clarity. They feel small around you now. Not because you make them feel small, but because your presence has become too honest for their past behavior to survive. They can't hide behind excuses anymore. They can't disguise their motives anymore. They can't pretend their choices were harmless. They know you felt everything they thought you didn't feel. They know you saw everything they thought you didn't see. They know you understood everything they thought you were too naive to understand. And that's why they're switching sides, because being against you now feels unsafe. Because staying distant now feels humiliating. Because ignoring you now feels impossible. They're not trying to reconnect with the old version of you. They're trying to earn permission to stand near the new version of you. And here's the most ironic part. They're not fighting to apologize so you'll forgive them. They're fighting to apologize so they can forgive themselves. Because your transformation is the mirror they've been avoiding. Your growth reflects everything they suppressed. Your confidence exposes everything they hid. Your resilience reveals everything they lacked. You are the reminder of what they could have become if they had chosen courage instead of insecurity, effort instead of ego, honesty instead of manipulation. And that's why they're fighting over who gets to apologize first. Not because they suddenly became kind-hearted or self-aware, but because they can't carry the weight of their own conscience anymore. They're exhausted from pretending. They're tired of acting indifferent. They're drained from resisting the truth. Your energy has become too loud for them to ignore. And now, as they inch their way back toward you, trying to gauge your reaction, trying to judge the gates of your emotional boundaries, trying to see if you're open or closed, something even more fascinating is happening beneath the surface, a shift that will shape the next stage of this entire story. Because while they're analyzing you, reading your posture, studying your silence, overthinking every facial expression you make, you're watching them with a clarity they never expected you to have. You're not defensive, you're not guarded, you're not hostile, you're just observant, and that observant energy is what's tearing their ego apart. Because when someone has truly evolved, their presence doesn't fight, it reveals. And being revealed is the one thing they never prepared themselves for. They were ready for you to snap, ready for you to call them out, ready for you to list every mistake, every betrayal, every moment they made you doubt yourself. They rehearsed their counter-arguments. They prepared their justifications. They created backup explanations in case you confronted them. But you didn't. You didn't confront them. You didn't demand accountability. You didn't list offenses. You didn't bring up the past with that heavy emotional tone they expected from you. Instead, you stood there with that calm energy that says, I've outgrown the old version of me, and I've outgrown the old version of you, too. And that is exactly what terrifies them. Because now they realize they're not approaching the person they mistreated. You're a completely different force now. Your self-control unnerves them. Your emotional stability throws them off. Your distance isn't cold, it's dignified. Your boundaries aren't harsh, they're clear. And that clarity makes them feel exposed. Because for the first time, they're seeing the truth without filters, without their ego protecting them, without their excuses comforting them. You didn't become petty, you became powerful. You didn't become angry, you became aware. And nothing scares guilty people more than someone who evolved without needing them. So now they're stuck in this strange internal tug-of-war. One part of them wants to rush toward you with a dramatic apology. Another part wants to stay back and pretend nothing happened. Another part wants to rebuild the connection slowly. Another part wants to act like they never left. They don't know which version of themselves is safe to bring to you. Their mind is spinning with possibilities. Their pride is weakening. Their excuses are collapsing. Their heart is restless because they know they can't undo what they did. They can't erase the energy they brought. They can't rewrite the choices they made. They can only face the consequences of who they were, and that terrifies them. What's even more fascinating is that they're not just switching sides emotionally, they're switching alliances socially too. People who once laughed at you are now defending you. People who once doubted you are now praising you. People who once dismissed you are now speaking highly of you. And the ones who hurt you the most are watching these social dynamics change, watching opinions shift, watching conversations evolve. They're realizing you didn't just grow privately, you grew publicly. And that public shift is what's making them sweat. Because now they're not just apologizing to you, they're apologizing to their own reputation. Their pride can't handle being the only ones who got it wrong. Their ego can't survive being seen as the person who underestimated the one everyone else is now admiring. This is why they're suddenly trying to get close again. This is why they're suddenly looking for ways to initiate small talk. This is why they're carefully observing your mood before they speak. This is why their voice softens when they address you. This is why they become overly polite in conversations. They're trying to figure out one thing: how much do you know? Not about what they did, but about how deeply they regret it. Because regret leaks through energy, and their energy has been leaking non-stop. They're terrified you can feel their guilt. Terrified you can sense their embarrassment. Terrified you can see the inner conflict they're trying to hide behind neutral expressions. They're terrified of being transparent around you now. Because transparency means vulnerability. Vulnerability means truth. And truth means they have to face who they actually were toward you, not who they pretended to be. And while all of this is happening, something even more unexpected is unfolding behind the scenes. They're competing with each other. The same people who once united against you, bonded over their assumptions about you, laughed at your expense, or silently rooted against you. Those same people are now competing for your forgiveness, competing for your attention, competing for your approval, competing for the privilege of being let back into your world. They don't admit it out loud, but they feel it. They feel the rivalry. They feel the urgency. They feel the pressure to act before someone else beats them to the apology. Because now, apologizing to you isn't just about clearing their conscience. It's about securing a connection that they suddenly realize was always valuable. You've become the person whose presence is rare, whose energy is grounding, whose growth is undeniable. And in their mind, losing you permanently feels like losing access to a version of themselves they always wanted to be, but never had the courage to cultivate. You represent something they lack, something they admire, something they secretly wished they could emulate. And now that you've detached, now that you've flourished, now that you've redefined yourself without them, they feel the heaviness of their own stagnation. You're not chasing them anymore, and that forces them to chase themselves, to confront themselves, to question themselves. They're seeing aspects of their personality they never wanted to acknowledge. They're recognizing patterns they always denied. They're feeling the consequences of their own emotional immaturity. You were the mirror that made them uncomfortable, and now that same mirror makes them want to fix what they broke. Not because they deserve a place in your life, but because they can't stand who they were when they mistreated you. And as the days go by, the tension inside them grows. They replay old conversations. They rethink their decisions. They remember moments where they dismissed your kindness, ignored your intuition, misread your intentions. They're haunted by the clarity of hindsight, haunted by the thought that they pushed away the very person who respected them genuinely, and haunted by the realization that you didn't need to punish them. You let life do that work for you. They can feel the distance now, not the physical one, the energetic one. That distance isn't angry, it isn't bitter, it isn't closed off. It's simply evolved. It's the distance of someone who no longer operates from insecurity, someone who doesn't beg for connection, someone who recognizes their worth, someone who doesn't bend for people who weren't willing to stand next to them. And that distance is the final blow to their ego. Because your detachment isn't rejection, it's liberation. And the moment they felt that liberation is the moment they realized something terrifying. Because now, as they hover on the edge of approaching you, their hesitation thickens, their indecision sharpens, their nerves taut like a wire about to snap. They're debating not only how to speak, but if they even deserve to. And in that hesitation lies the most powerful leverage of all, the silent authority of your energy. You don't need to speak to assert dominance. You don't need to explain, justify, or demand. Your mere presence, fully anchored in self-awareness, shifts the balance, makes them question everything they once took for granted, and forces them to confront the consequences of their miscalculations. And those consequences are terrifying to them, because every interaction they now attempt feels like walking on a floor that could collapse beneath them at any moment. Every word they rehearse, every gesture they plan, every attempt to seem sincere feels fragile, transparent, and inadequate. They are acutely aware that you've evolved far beyond the rules they once used to manipulate or predict you. And that awareness fills them with a mix of awe, guilt, and primal fear. They are scrambling to regain footing, and yet they can't, because the energy you radiate is both unshakable and unpredictable. They expected weakness, they expected neediness, they expected the old patterns, the familiar rhythm of someone who tolerated their indecision, their ego, their arrogance. But none of that exists anymore. You've become a force they cannot bargain with, cannot control, cannot predict. And that is why they're switching sides, not out of respect, not purely out of regret, but because your energy exposed their limitations, and they are terrified of being left behind, irrelevant, or worse, seen for the shallow versions of themselves they allowed to exist. And the fight begins, not a fight of words or aggression, but a subtle, almost invisible competition to be the first to reach you, to earn that first opportunity to reconcile, to make amends. One by one, they measure their own guilt against the others, comparing who wronged you the most, who hesitated the longest, who missed the clearest signals. They jockey for position in a way that is almost ridiculous to observe, and yet it is terrifyingly effective because it's powered by their conscience, by the part of them that finally refuses to ignore the truth. They can't pretend any longer. They can't delay. They can't spin excuses that even they believe. And all of it centers on you, not because you demanded it, not because you created leverage, but because your presence, your evolution, and your energy forced a reckoning. The energy that once intimidated them quietly, persistently, now dominates the room without effort. They feel it in the weight of your gaze, in the calm certainty of your movements, in the unspoken confidence that suggests you've anticipated all of their inner turmoil. They realize that apologizing isn't enough, not because you need it, but because they need it, to reconcile their own sense of integrity with the reality they previously refused to acknowledge. And as they move closer, fumbling through their words, attempting to calibrate every syllable, every intonation, they discover something even more powerful. You're still the observer. You're still measuring their sincerity, their readiness, their awareness. You've allowed the door to be open, but you hold the key to how fully they can step through it. And that knowledge, the subtle yet absolute control it implies, is a force more terrifying than anger, more disarming than confrontation. They're switching sides, and they're doing it in real time, in front of you. And with every gesture, every tone, every hesitation, they are proving how deeply your growth unsettled them. They're aware now that this isn't just a personal evolution, it's a social recalibration. The people around them notice the dynamic, the energy, the subtle shift in authority, the way their eyes track you differently. They notice the quiet reverence, the caution, the careful measuring of words and movements. And in that observation, your influence spreads. Your energy doesn't just intimidate, it forces reflection, introspection, self-analysis. You're not creating fear by threat. You're creating fear by inevitability. The inevitability that they must confront their own inadequacies, their own poor judgment, their own underestimation of your presence. And as they compete, jockeying for the first opportunity to speak, to apologize, to redeem themselves, they reveal more than they intend. They reveal the truth of their past misjudgments. They reveal the depth of their fear, the fragility of their ego, the extent of their envy, and the urgency of their need for approval, not from you, but from the part of themselves that recognizes they missed the mark. And while they scramble, while they measure each other, while they debate the order in which to approach, the thing they cannot escape is the reality that none of this is about manipulating you. You cannot be manipulated anymore. Your energy, your presence, your growth, these things are beyond their control. And the realization strikes them like a blow. For all their planning, for all their strategizing, for all their pride, you are the uncontested authority in this dynamic now. You've observed quietly, patiently, strategically. You've allowed space for them to reveal themselves. And as they reveal themselves, scrambling for redemption, apologizing, overcompensating, competing, they're showing you everything you needed to see. Not just that they understand your value now, but that they recognize the consequences of underestimating it. That recognition, the raw, undeniable truth, is intoxicating and disarming. It demonstrates the power of silent dominance, of energy that doesn't need to assert itself loudly, that doesn't need to threaten, that simply exists fully, immovably, unmistakably. And now comes the final act of their internal war. They are lined up, emotionally, psychologically, spiritually, each one trying to navigate the correct approach. Who speaks first? Who admits more? Who softens? Who emphasizes their understanding? Who demonstrates insight without overcompensating? They are measuring, calculating, overthinking, agonizing, and all of it is visible, tangible, and impossible to ignore. They're watching each other, aware that if they stumble, someone else will win the privilege of making amends first. That awareness makes them jittery, nervous, almost frantic, yet everything is filtered through the overwhelming respect, fear, and awe your energy commands. And they can't escape it. No strategy can circumvent it. No planning can overcome it. No excuse can reverse it. They are utterly at the mercy of the energy you projected long before they ever realized it existed. They are switching sides, yes, but not in a chaotic or random fashion. They are doing so in a pattern dictated by your presence, your evolution, your clarity. Their apologies, their gestures, their attempts to reclaim access are choreographed not by their egos, but by the unconscious pressure your energy applies. They feel compelled to act not because they are brave, but because they are confronted with the undeniable truth. Standing against you is no longer possible. Standing indifferent is no longer viable. Standing casual is no longer sustainable. Your energy shattered the illusion that they could remain unaffected. And now, every approach, every step, every word they muster is a reflection of that realization. And as all this unfolds, the most astonishing phenomenon occurs. They begin to mirror your energy without even knowing it. Their voices soften, their posture shifts, their tone becomes careful. Their attempts at control dissolve because control is irrelevant in your presence. Their competitiveness becomes a silent acknowledgement of your authority. They are fighting to re-enter your sphere, not because they have mastered it, but because your growth and presence made them realize how desperately they had underestimated the person they once tried to manipulate, dismiss, or ignore. They are humbled. They are disoriented. They are overpowered, not by words, not by confrontation, not by threat, but by the undeniable force of your energy, your calm, your clarity, your power. And that, finally, is why they're switching sides. Not because they planned it, not because they plotted it, not because they calculated it. They are switching sides because your presence demanded it. Your evolution demanded it. Your energy demanded it. Every hesitant step toward you, every overthought gesture, every carefully rehearsed word, it is proof that they cannot resist the gravitational pull of someone who is entirely centered, entirely aware, entirely unshakable. And now, the stage is set. They are competing. They are apologizing. They are acknowledging. They are realizing. And while they battle for your attention, your acceptance, your permission, the reality is they are witnessing the power they always feared, but never understood. The power you always held, now fully revealed, fully embodied, fully alive.